Now I'm going to get into how to make the merger succeed. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on this. I mean, how are we doing on time? How are we doing well? Because, you know, this is actually, I could write a book on this literally. I could do 2 or 3 webinars on this literally, because the ease of financing or the ease of negotiating and closing a deal is a lot of work involved, but the complexity of conducting successful mergers is very, very high. Now, in this case, though, if it's a SPAC, if it's a funded SPAC buying one company, your company, then the complexities are much reduced, aren't they? It's seriously simpler, because in most cases, the funding company, the funding SPAC isn't going to want to dismantle the company or peel off 4/5 of it and throw them away, or reinvent them and do them in a different way 6 weeks from now and cause them all to die on the vine, which is the sort of thing that happens all too often in regular acquisitions. But in the event that that is the sort of thing which the acquiring company is thinking, yeah, well, we only like this bit, we'll get rid of the rest, that kind of stuff, or we'll reinvent the way they're doing it to make it much, much more profitable. You need to figure that out. And if you buy into it, then you are going to be involved in maximizing the efficiency of the combination. And especially if it's going to end up being 3 or 4 companies combined to make this whole thing click and be an amazing win. So that's when this stuff comes into play. And as I said, in other situations, I would spend more time on it. In this case, I'll be relatively brief. The acquiring company needs to respect the nuances of the culture and what makes the acquired company successful, whatever they may be. So coming in and sort of steamrolling them because they don't make sense, or they're illogical, or they look inefficient, is not the way to go, because that's just the way to decimate morale and decimate the team where the good people quit, right? So respect the nuances of it, and that really takes local presence. It takes being there and listening and paying attention and being considerate and respectful and not moving too fast, right? Because if you move too fast, generally you don't have sufficient knowledge of what gives. You don't even know the business well enough as to what's really kicking, right? You got to be in it, and you got to be speaking to customers. You got to drill down in order to both add value and also know what you're actually dealing with, because the external view is so distorted. It's distorted deliberately. Companies try to make themselves look larger than life every day. All of us do, probably, right? And that's how you get to where you're going. You have to have a future thought process, a vision, and the more you can paint that picture and the more that others believe it, the better off you are. But getting into what actually works and demonstrating that to yourself so that you know what to adjust, you know what to tweak, and then you also you can spend the time figuring out how and when to make adjustments so that they stick and are successful. It's a lot of work, and being attentive, paying close attention. Don't replace the old with the new until you know that the new actually works. It's astounding in doing so many mergers that I was involved in, where I'm running the merger, I'm running the business that's being acquired, and somebody comes in from finance or operations and says, okay, Rob, we're going to be switching off this thing and replacing it with that thing next Thursday. All good? And I just ask a few questions. Well, how long have we been running them in parallel to demonstrate that the new system works? Well, we don't need to, because we've done similar things before. So this is just throw a switch and it'll work fine. So I'm a skeptical bastard when it comes to that, because I've had so many unpleasant and really more observed extreme cock-ups by companies where they didn't do it right because they assumed their new method would work, right? A company that, my first IPO, Ashton Tate, soon after as I was leaving, they were negotiating an acquisition, and then afterwards they purchased a company with one of the market-leading word processors, whose name will come back to me in a minute, probably. And they convinced themselves, Ashton Tate management convinced themselves that they could do all the manufacturing, which was simple, making discs, making manuals, putting them together and shipping them, that they could do that very quickly. So they closed down the warehouse of the acquired company. And then the following 4 or 5 months, they weren't able to fulfill any orders because their warehouse actually wasn't up to speed, couldn't do it. And I had friends, actually my girlfriend at that day was working in one of the biggest software distributors, dealing with dealers and large-scale dealers and entities that were trying to get their hands on this software and couldn't get it because none was to be found, right? So what were they doing? They were building the market share of Microsoft Word, which was a dog in those days. It was a really very poor piece of software. The other leading software programs in word processing were benefiting by this extreme cock up by Ashton Tate. Okay, the buying company. Minimizing top-down decisions is really key because it's so easy for a well-intended decision made at the top. Well, hey guys, I mean, we need to shave 10%, and that sounds logical to me. Why would they do it a different way anyway? Okay, so mate, let's do that next, by the end of the month, right? And now you've gone in, somebody's steamrollering things, a department gets shut down. It's all done in a ham-fisted manner because it was done from above and nobody actually buys into it. And, you're really killing the morale of the people, which is why businesses thrive, right? Building morale, getting it genuinely high and keeping it there is a serious challenge. Killing it is just something you do at the snap of a top-down type decision made 3,000 miles away. I already covered that. And again, in this combination circumstance, being a genuine, if you're not from inside, then become a genuine advocate of that entity and of its team. Show that by actions, because that is when you'll start to get their support. You'll start to build your credibility. So to give you an example, when Symantec acquired the Norton business, we did a layoff of about 60% of the staff, but we had already planned it out ahead of time, and we had planned out who would be transitioning and what period of transition they would have, what bonuses they would have to get them to stay, and so forth. And we had practice at doing this. So we did a very careful job of merging the two companies with great success, because what happens in that situation is that everyone's morale is slammed by this terrible event of an acquisition. And then they're looking for the second shoe to drop, right? That's one issue. You can cut the air with a knife. You can feel the electricity. Making things happen in that context is very challenging. But over time, I was the local advocate. I was driving this company's growth within Symantec, showing that I was driving for the success of our business, for the success of our business unit. And when I made decisions and when I made selections and when I chose, whatever I did, it was all based on building the success of our team and what we were doing collectively. It took a while to earn the grudging respect of the teams, and also, proving that there wasn't going to be a second shoe to drop, right? And then conservative budgeting. So we were always ahead of expectations in terms of revenue and profit goals. So we were always able to hire more than the budget, that sort of thing. That kind of activity built morale. So we had marvelous morale, and we had good luck, and we were doing something needed, and the timing was right. It's never one thing. But even if you got all the environmental components and the strategic trends in your favor, you can still fuck it up royally by being clumsy, right? Or hasty. The best thing that I did, and I did it with the other big acquisition at Symantec, was call customers and find out what they loved and hated about us, and what this latest update was doing, and why it was great or why it was not. So I actually had a fundamental understanding of our business. So when I was in a discussion with the developers or the product management team, I wasn't able to be misled if they would try that, or if they were misleading themselves, I could see past it, right? But that's obvious to do, but it does take time and effort, and it's invaluable stuff, because now you know the business from the ground up. You're really clued in, and there's no substitute for that and the time that it takes. And the last point when you're doing this is to listen, and that applies throughout the entire journey, doesn't it? Listening, paying attention. That's how come we're successful entrepreneurs, is because we are paying attention and adjusting course accordingly, right? Spacs are a phenomenon. That's why you guys are here. You're actively listening.